Hello, hello, hello. Hello, my empowered principals. Make sure you can hear me okay. Make sure you can hear. The cat is sitting next to me. My niece is living with me right now, and she has a little kitty who has her bell on, so you can hear her. So welcome into letting people go from love. This is a conversation that we don't have as school leaders, and we certainly don't have it in our training as a school leader. But we're going to talk about it today because it's the real deal. All right. So as you're coming on in, I'm just going to make sure, let me know if you guys can hear me okay. Just checking audio. Okay, it looks good. Okay, looks like we're ready to roll. All right, we'll dive right in. So letting people go, firing people. We don't like to use the word firing because it feels so harsh, but that's the truth of what we're doing. We are letting people go. And so, unfortunately, it's just a part of school leadership. And it's a really uncomfortable part because I'm usually thinking about the person that we're letting go, like that person who's being fired from their job or not being asked to return or being released, right? They have their own set of thoughts and feelings about that experience. And if you've ever been that person who was non-renewed or non-returned or not invited back, or you were let go, you can relate to that experience. Like you can relate to how you imagine it would feel if it were you. Okay. So most of the time, excuse me, we focus on the person, but I also want to talk about how it feels for you. I think this is something we don't realize in school leadership, that when we are the leader, when we are the person who's letting somebody go, it feels just as terrible for us. And yet it is our responsibility as a school leader. So as school leaders, it means we need to understand not only how to approach the conversation, but we want to get to the meat of why this feels so uncomfortable. It's how do we allow for and navigate the emotions that come up for you, that come up for the teacher, and eventually that come up for the staff. So today I'm going to teach you a way to approach firing somebody and letting them go that's going to help you feel more aligned and stay grounded even when emotions are running high. Because the reason that letting somebody go is so hard, we say that it's so hard. The reason it's so hard is because of the emotions we feel, the emotions the other person's feeling, the emotions we're worried that they're going to feel. Like we are thinking about them and how bad they're going to feel and how awful they're going to feel and what they might do in response to those emotions. We're thinking about ourselves, how awful it feels for us, and we don't want to do this thing. We don't want to tell them. And then we're worried about what other people will think and the emotions that they will have, the thoughts they'll have, the emotions they'll think. Okay. So I'm so glad that you guys are here to talk about this, because it's not something that we often have the space and energy to talk about. Okay. So here's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to try and make this as succinct and as simple as possible so that you can take what I say today and you can actually implement it into those conversations that you're going to be having. So if you're watching this live, I'm recording this in March of 24. March is the season. February and March, you're making the decisions, and now you're entering into these conversations. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be teaching another mini lesson on how to hold space between March and June, because you're not letting them go and saying you're fired today, and then they're going away to process their emotions away, or they're not given 2 weeks notice, like maybe in corporate. You have up to 3 months, right? You have March, April, May, maybe all of June, 3 to 4 months that this person is still employed, still working for you. And we have to talk about how we navigate that space and how we create a culture that allows this person to feel safe and to feel supported, even though they're not being asked back. That conversation we're going to have tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Okay. So today I'm going to cover how to set the stage. And I want to say this in advance. When I talk about setting the stage, I am going to be talking about things that you can do at the beginning of the year to set yourself and the teachers up for success. If you're a brand new principal or this is your first time letting somebody go and you hear some things that I talk about today that you didn't do, I'm not saying these things to make you feel bad or to make you go backwards or to apologize or regret. These are planting seeds for next year, but I want to cover it now so that you can be thinking about how to set yourself up and teachers for the most success possible. Because the goal here is to not have to let people go. And I'm going to talk about the different reasons that people get let go, but we don't want to create an environment where we didn't set them up for success. We didn't set ourselves up for success. And now we're in a habit of having to let people go and having to hold space for people who are being let go. Okay. So we're going to talk about setting the stage, making the decision, having the conversation, and then how to handle the emotion that comes with that conversation, because that is the hardest part. That is the meat and bones of the strategy here. The strategy is not so much about the words you say. It's about the energy in which you say them. It's about the intention behind which you say them. And it's the emotional fuel that's driving the conversation. So if you're going into a conversation really nervous or really afraid to speak up, that's going to land differently than somebody who's confident. If you're being overly aggressive and like trying to be in like boss energy and being like, you're fired, and this is how it is, you're being really aggressive, that is going to land differently versus somebody who's compassionate and calm and curious and also like resolved that this is the decision. You're not wavering on the decision. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to handle all of that. So for those of you who are brand new to the empowered principal world, I want to welcome you into my space, into my world. I am Angela Kelly. I am the founder and CEO of Angela Kelly Coaching, which is a school leadership, life and leadership coaching program titled The Empowered Principal. I have different programs that I offer. Primarily, I do one-on-one coaching for a personalized experience, but my big coaching program is the EPC, the Empowered Principal Collaborative. It's a group coaching program where you get to mastermind with other like-minded colleagues. It's an amazing experience. It's my favorite thing to do. I love my one-on-ones too, but EPC is where it's headed. You know, this is where you want to be. It's a yearly membership where you just join in once and you're in for the entire school year. And it's open and available for those of you who are getting ready to come in for next year. If you guys want to come in at the end of this year, I'll give you a little bonus at the end here. So I've sat on many seats on the bus. I started out as pre-K teacher in Minnesota. I got my degree from Iowa State University. I was in Minnesota, moved out to California in 95, became a kindergarten teacher. That's the majority of time I was a first grade teacher. And then I became an instructional coach after 15 years of being an elementary teacher. I was a reading specialist first. I did that in between and then became an instructional coach. And then I got tapped on the shoulder and said, you'd be a great admin. And I was like, I'm not going to become an admin. Well, my superintendent, he was very convincing, very charming, and said, yes, you are amazing. You will be a great leader. So I took my admin credentialing program. I took the state assessment. Voila, I became a school leader. And I applied in my own district and got rejected. So I'm actually doing a course for people who are aspiring into school leadership and who want to know how to get hired and how to land that ideal job. I've got your back because I've been rejected by my very own district who told me to apply. And eventually the story ends very happily ever after. So stay tuned for that. I will be sharing more information at the end about where you can sign up for the other webinars. But I've done it all. Teacher, instructional coach, reading specialist. I was a site principal at a brand new school, my first 2 years as a principal. And then I was transitioned over back to my home school where I was the leader for the people that I had worked with for 15 years. So that was an interesting dynamic that I had to learn how to navigate. And then eventually I was promoted up to the district level where I was the RTI coordinator for the entire district. And that was magical because I was able to work with my peers, my fellow principals, and see like what's going on behind the scenes for them. Because on the surface, principals are like, we're very pulled together, we're very rah-rah, we love what we do. But behind closed doors, we have those moments of fear and trepidation and doubt and exhaustion and uncertainty. And we're wondering what the point is of all of this. So if that is you, I want you to know, like, we understand. We're here to validate you. That's what EPC is all about. The Empowered Principal Collaborative. It's where we join together in union and in harmony and in collaboration in the spirit of connecting and validating and supporting you, because this job's really, really, really tough. So that's who I am. That's a little bit about my background, but I want to focus on you right now. This is your time for you. If you're feeling panicked because you have to have this conversation and you're not sure what to say or how to say it, we're going to set the stage for you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to guide you. And if you have any questions by the end, you can jump on the Q&A, or you can join the Empowered Principal Facebook group. It's a free group on Facebook. If you're a Facebook person, you can just join in and ask your questions there. Then that way you can do it anonymously, or you can ask around, and then you're not going to get just my expertise. You're going to get the expertise of the 2,000 plus members in this group. Okay. So before we jump in to firing people, let's go back and set the stage. Let's start with the beginning of the year. Now, again, I share this with you, not for you to feel bad if you didn't do these things, but for you to plant seeds in your own mind and to think about how you want to set yourself and teachers up for success as you're going into hiring for the new year. And I'm going to be offering how to hire ideal people coming up in a couple of weeks. Okay. So ideally, to set yourself up to not have to let people go, you want to hire the best people you can, of course, right? That's not rocket science. But you want to think about, and this is why I'm bringing this up now, because you're going to go into the interviewing chapter of the year, the interviewing stage of the year, where you're letting people go now, you're telling them now, and you have to fill those positions. So you might have to go out and recruit and go to job fairs or conduct interviews with your district. So you're going to be looking for people. And the best way to not have to fire somebody is to hire the best people you can, the ideal candidate for your job. And I'm going to teach you in a future course on how to make that match, find that connection. Okay. You need to know what you're looking for. Okay. So be thinking about this when you're filling a position. You need to know what you're looking for and the lens through which you're going to make staffing decisions. You use different lenses at different times. If you're an elementary person, you're going to want to make sure that the person that you hire can work well with young children, right? That they can work on grade level teams, that they understand PLC, that they understand how to be inclusive and how to have conversations, because elementary parents require more engagement and more involvement and more communication on a regular basis because their children are so young. Okay. That's just an example, but you want to know what you're looking for. You want to understand the positions you're filling. You want to understand the dynamic of that grade level, or if you're in middle or high school department levels, right? You need to know the credentials you're looking for, but really want to understand the mindset you're looking for in the skill set. Okay. So then when you're thinking about who you need to hire and the qualifications that you need to think about, you also want to understand, what are my standards? What are my expectations, right? If I were to hire an ideal teacher, how could I articulate those standards, those expectations, those desires with them in my, when I'm recruiting, when I'm speaking to people, if I go to a job fair and I'm speaking to people, or we're running advertisements, how do I communicate the match that I'm looking for, right? You want to be able to do that. So when we're setting the stage in terms of letting somebody go, we start with thinking about how we hire ideal people in the first place, right? And then you want to think about, how do I articulate that in our advertising, whether that's you're live in person at a job fair, or whether you are running ads in magazines, newspapers, those kinds of things. Okay. And I know a lot of you maybe use EdJoin or other platforms, online platforms. That's how most people, right, submit their applications. And that's how many districts now just advertise their openings. Okay. So also what you want to think about, and I definitely will go into more detail on this, is how to set people up for success. So there's the interviewing, like the recruitment and the interviewing process, and then there's the onboarding process. So what will those teachers who you're hiring, what will they need to be successful at your school? Things that come up for me when I think about this are clear communication, consistent communication. They're going to need to know the very basics. So you might want to take some time and just jot down, like, what are the essentials that a new teacher would need to know on this campus? Who are the essential people they might need to know? And as you're going through the year, when you're setting people up for success, there's the foundational onboarding. That's going to be a whole separate course that I teach. But for this, I just want you to be thinking about it as you're entering into this HR period where you're interviewing and hiring and onboarding. Okay. So as you're going through the year, now you've got your people onboarded and you've set them up for success as best you can. Not everybody's going to be a match, right? There will be teachers that you hire that will not be a match. One of the most important things you can do is document. And the reason that's important, as you can imagine, is that formal documentation, whether you write up formal summaries or you write, I always like to do a summary of meeting where I sent an email just describing, here's my interpretation of our meeting. Here are the agreements we came to. Here is the summary of that meeting. And then they can add to that to ensure clear communication has happened. But you've got to document in whatever format works for you, so that you have a record of the conversations and the observations and the interpretation of those conversations. That's really important. Okay. One of the things I want to remind you as you're setting up the stage for these conversations is you want to consider keeping it to the facts versus the story. So there is the facts of the observations that you've made, the facts about what was done and what was said that you could document officially, right? You could say this is a fact. It's like, I consider a fact to be like something you could prove reasonably in a court of law, or you could prove to somebody that this was said or this was an agreement that we made because it's documented, versus the story, the interpretation, the perception, the understanding, the way that people interpret, right? There is an opinion of how things happened, and there are the documents of how things happened. So as a principal, you need to be always thinking in terms of documentation, right? I can remember so many times where there were teachers who really, really, really wanted to do well, right? And they thought they were doing well. And they would convince themselves that they were doing well, or their friends would convince them, you're doing just fine. So I would have to make sure that I was documenting very specifically, not so much the emotional story that I had about this person, but the facts about it, so that they could not refute them, and that you could show them how this might be happening and they just weren't noticing it in the time. Okay. So be mindful that you want to be very clear. I call this like clean coaching, clean leading, where you're not getting clouded in your decision-making around whether you're going to keep somebody or not based on a story, that you're using the facts to make very clean decisions. Okay. And it's best if you're approaching somebody about potentially not having them return next year, to not come from left field. It's best if you don't come from left field. If you don't hit them sideways and they had no idea, they did not see this coming. And the way that we do that is to hold conversations, be honest, open, and willing from the very beginning. That requires you to be vulnerable and honest, which requires them to receive that honesty and to be open to feedback, and them to be vulnerable, because the way that we grow our teachers is through mutual vulnerability. You can't come in and hide and then expect them to be open to receiving feedback and growing if you're not being fully honest with where they stand in relation to the standards and expectations that you have. Okay. I want to talk for a minute about inherited teachers, because I want to acknowledge that for many of you, you didn't hire a teacher that you have to let go. If this is your first or second year, or there was maybe some teachers that moved around to different schools, you might have teachers in your campus at your site that you need to let go, or you've made a decision to let go, that you didn't hire. So you could not have set them up for success, right? They weren't your choice to begin with. So you either inherited them or they were transferred to your school. Like, you came in as the principal and you had this staff. And as you're working with teachers, there are people who are open to conversations with you and people less open. And you might decide, like, there is a person that was hired by the previous administrator or by a district staff member that you don't believe is the best fit for your school. Okay. Now, I just want you to take a moment, and first of all, I want you to honor that. Like, it feels frustrating if you inherited teachers, whether they were at your school when you entered in, or you were at the school and people were transferred to your school and they weren't a match. I just want you to take a moment and acknowledge how that feels, because that is frustrating. You didn't have the means or the opportunity to set these people up for success and to do what you would want to do to onboard them and to communicate with them and to set them up for success. Okay. I want you to first acknowledge and validate that for yourself, because it is frustrating. And there are circumstances with our staff that are outside of our control. We didn't have the power to hire them. And also to be very open with ourselves and to notice any preconceived notions that we might have. Perhaps somebody has told you a story about this person if they're being transferred over, or somebody, when you came into the school, said, hey, here's the story about this staff. Here's the general culture. Here's the climate over here. This is who these people are. It's very easy to take on the beliefs of other people as it relates to your teachers and your staff. So you want to notice that. Am I believing a story or somebody else's perception about another person or a staff at large? Am I coming in with preconceived notions, or am I making any assumptions? Notice that. Your feelings are valid. When you're frustrated that you have a teacher that got transferred over, those are valid. We acknowledge that. And we also want to clean up any preconceived notions that aren't serving us or serving our ability to lead somebody into their potential. Okay. And the way we do that is we think about how it feels for that person. If a teacher got transferred, especially mid-year, from one school to another, imagine how they felt, right? Being removed from one school and being placed in another. Just for a second, the way to get out of being super frustrated for yourself is to think about them just for a minute, about how that must have felt for them. And then you might be able to understand, like, they might be embarrassed, they might be ashamed, they might feel guilty, they might feel awkward, they might feel judged. And when we think about how they're feeling, it can soften our judgment a little bit, our preconceived notions, and open us up to providing them the opportunity to thrive and to show that they are capable of having success. And maybe it was just a placement that wasn't the right match. Maybe your placement might be right. So think about how you want them to feel at your school. Do you want them to feel welcome? Do you want them to feel like this is a fresh start and an opportunity? Do we want to have that conversation with that teacher to invite them in to an experience that gives them the opportunity to to step up and be the best version of themselves, right? Is it possible that they might be successful with the right atmosphere and guided by a leader as empowered as you are? If you're here watching this, whether you're live or you're in person, you're an empowered principal. You're a leader who wants to evolve and transform and grow your capacity as a leader. When you take classes like this, whether they're free or paid, you are saying to yourself and to your career, I want to be the best version of myself. So if you are here today, that tells me that you want to be the best leader you can be, and you can hold space and capacity to believe in this teacher, that they might have the opportunity to thrive and grow at your school. And you can be attracting really high caliber teachers when you are in really big belief that your school is amazing, your leadership is amazing, and that people want to work for you and at your school because of the vibe, the energy, and the fuel through which you lead your school and lead your staff, okay? So for the staff members that you do inherit, we want to set the stage for them. Assume a fresh start. Give them a fresh start. Give them a true fresh start. We weren't there at their old school, so we can't know with certainty what went down, who did what, who said what, who didn't do what. We want to assume positive intention. And we want to invite them in. We want to welcome them, be warm, be friendly, embrace them, and clearly state expectations so they know right off the start, this is who we are at this school. This is how we operate. They can fit in, they can belong, they can be successful here. And here's how to be successful. Let me just give it to you. Let me state that clearly and be articulate about what I expect and what the standards are for this school. And then acknowledge people for their effort. And also keep in mind, they're probably a little sensitive right now if they were transferred. And maybe they have a chip on their shoulder and they're being frustrated, or maybe they're very hurt. We're not sure where they're at in their fight or flight response to being moved. Maybe they're okay. Maybe it was the best thing that could have happened to them, and maybe they're happy and eager to be with you. However they come in energetically, whether they're like upset and angry and frustrated and embarrassed, and they're kind of like angry and hiding it and kind of in fight mode, or if they're a little bit in, flight mode or like fawning mode, and they're very embarrassed and they're trying to hide and they're very ashamed that something like this happened, or they're like energized and ready to go. You can embrace them, let them know it's safe to start over, to start fresh, that, if something didn't work out at one school, it doesn't mean it can't work out at another school. And we just want to hold space for them to be the best version of themselves at their highest potential, and believe that that's possible. Okay. So acknowledge them for any effort they're putting in, trying to fit in, trying to belong, trying to participate, trying to be engaged. Really encourage them. It's like when you're teaching a toddler how to walk and they keep falling down. They have to get back up and get back up. We keep encouraging them, right? And supporting them. Hold individual conversations with them. That really goes a long way with connecting with that person and helping them feel appreciated and wanted and acknowledged. Because you got to think they're going through a form of rejection, which can be really painful. And then always on your end, document from your own observations and own experiences. Do not assume based on other people's words or what other people said or other people saw and they're reporting it to you. Keep those distinctively separate. You document from your own observations and your own experiences. Okay. Now, let's talk about some of the reasons why people are let go. Now, think about this. If you're a brand new leader, you're a brand new principal, you've probably heard through the grapevine of people that were non-renewed, that didn't make it. They were in non-tenure status. They were observed. They might have been given coaching or given a mentor, or maybe they were put on a plan, and then they were let go. Think about how that felt for you as the teacher who heard about it, and then the fear that it invokes in you when you're so afraid that your friend or your peer, your colleague was let go. Typically, here are the reasons why people get let go. Number one, overstaffing. There's just less positions available than the number of people that got hired. This is typically a district process, which they kind of tell you, if you're the site leader, they kind of tell you, this is how it's going to go down. It's a seniority based thing most often, not always, but most often. It's they let it shake out because some people leave, some people go on medical leave, or maybe a maternity leave or family medical leave, any kind of leave. Those people shake out. There's positions that open, some people move. So there is movement in the district, but when people have to be let go, it's because of overnumbers, like overstaffing. It's just that there were a certain number of people on leave. So we hired some temporary staff, but then these people came back and there wasn't quite enough spots. This one's painful for both of us because they might be doing an amazing job. They might be a better match than some of the teachers coming back off of leave, right? And you're like, oh no, this can feel sad for you and for the person because they've done nothing wrong. They're not really being fired. It's just simply a numbers. It's a math game. And just because they did everything they could and they were an amazing match, it doesn't mean you get to keep them. You might still have to let them go. Okay. Another reason that you might have to let people go, and I was just working with a client on this, is downsizing, a reduction of staff. Maybe your projections for your student numbers are lower, and so they're reducing the number of teachers at each grade level, for example, or in a department. It's similar to overstaffing. It tends to be a district level position, a district level decision, or a district level process. And they navigate a lot of that. You still have to do the work. They're still going to ask you to have the conversations. So this will apply to you. If you're overstaffed or you're downsizing, this will apply to you. A third reason that we let people go is a failure to meet the standard or a failure to meet the requirements of the position. This is a performance issue. This is typically where you do have to make the decision. You are the school leader. You have been observing them. You've been working with them and mentoring them. Perhaps you have an instructional coach who's been working with them, and they have not met the standards of the professional standards that you have set in your state or your county or your district. Okay. This is the most typical conversation next to the other two, because this one really hits home with you because you're the one making the decision. The fourth one is a violation of some kind. An employee has demonstrated an infraction that warrants dismissal from the position. When you have a violation of some kind and it warrants a dismissal, it's typically immediately, or the person goes on like a leave. They get placed on administrative leave while an investigation and conversations take place and a decision's made. And then they either come back or they are permanently dismissed from their position. That is typically like very, very rare. Something very egregious has to happen for a person to be placed on administrative leave, and then a formal investigation happens where a determination is made if the employee is going to stay. Again, you will be guided by your district if a violation has occurred. You're not going to do that on your own. Okay. So whatever the reason, for every reason that somebody is being let go, there will be a different emotion. This is very important. Okay. So write this down. Different reason, different emotion. Depending on the reason that you're letting somebody go, it will most likely feel different for you, for the person, for the staff. If you're letting go based on numbers, they can be amazing. You can write an amazing letter. Everybody can rally around them and cheer them on, and we can get the letters written so that they can land somewhere else where there is enough positions. Now, I know right now in the year of 2024, we have staffing shortage, so you might not have to be doing things based on numbers. But a lot of people are downsizing because of their projections with their student numbers. So again, in that case, different emotion. It's you don't want to let these people go and you like them and you want to keep them, but you have to let them go. Just it's a numbers game. It's a math game that can feel highly uncomfortable. Sometimes it's more uncomfortable than wanting to let somebody go. When you don't want to let them go, but you have to, there can be emotions on your end and on their end and on the staff's end too that feel very painful because this person's put in so much great effort and energy into the position. Okay. But our thoughts about the situation, whether we are letting them go because they haven't met a standard and this is the standard and they haven't met it. And that might be uncomfortable for you, but it's the standard. It's the decision you have to make. Or whether there's been a violation where it's not even an option for you to consider. It's a conversation that's at a much higher level that you are involved in that, but it's at a much higher level than you. It might involve lawyers. It might involve superintendent, right? It gets up to the top. And as a team, you make decisions about the strategic next best step. Okay. So for those of you who are feeling unsettled about letting somebody go and firing them, most likely it's because you've made the decision yourself to let them go, or you're kind of bummed out. It's a numbers game and it's not that you just don't have a position to be able to keep everybody in the same place. Okay. But here's what I want to articulate. It's not the act of firing that feels hard. It's our thoughts and emotions and what we make it mean about ourselves as leaders and about the teachers and about what the staff's going to think that triggers how we feel. The discomfort that we feel when we fire somebody is based on what we're thinking about us, about them, about the staff. And so you might experience a lot of nervous energy, but the intensity of that nervousness may sway depending on the reason behind, which is why I bring this up. Okay, so I'm going to focus on talking about the decision to let somebody go. When somebody has not performed at the level, the standard upon which you have set for your school, and you have had conversations, you've done observations, you've tried all the things, and now it's time to make the decision. So a couple of prompts to think about while you're in this decision-making process is, number one, what's the reason you're contemplating firing this particular individual? What's the reason? Write it down. Why are you letting them go? You want to understand your reasoning here. And I would write it down on a piece of paper so that you can see the reason behind. Then number two, what is the decision filter you are using to decide? So here are the reasons why I'm contemplating this. And then what is the filter? What's the the criteria upon which I'm going to decide whether this person stays or goes? And then make sure, no matter what, this is the most important part, that your decision is aligned with your leadership values. If you're making a decision that does not feel good, if you don't love the reasons that you're contemplating, you don't like the decision filter that you're using, the decision will not feel aligned. It's going to feel terrible. And that's going to come across in the conversation that you're about to hold. Okay. You have to be coming in resolved, aligned, and feeling confident about the decision and the way that you made this decision. So the decision process, these are the prompts that I give my clients, and I'm going to give them to you right here for free because I love you and I want you to experience just a more calm, safe, grounded experience when you're letting people go. These are some of the questions I asked myself when I was going through the decision-making process around letting somebody go. Am I prepared as the leader of this school to commit to this person for 30 plus years? I think about the decision to tenure somebody like a long-term marriage. You're going to go into literal contract with this person for life. Do you want to be the person who committed the district to this person for 30 years? Because I'll tell you what, you're probably going to come and go, and that teacher's going to be there. So the district is the one who ends up being responsible for that teacher long after you have made the decision. So just be mindful. Am I a yes on this? You want to be a yes if you're going to tenure somebody. You do not want to tenure somebody that you're like, I'm a 50-50 on. Or, the reason I'm going to say yes to them is there's not anybody else out there. That might not feel like a very aligned decision for you. Okay. Another prompt to consider: does this person exhibit the drive and the attitude and the mindset, the will required for continually continually learning and growing as an educator. If there's anything I can offer as a coach for school leaders, it's that the mindset, continual learning mindset is essential. We are educators. We're teaching children to be lifelong learners. So we have to be lifelong learners. We have to continually grow our skill set as a leader, grow our emotional capacity, grow our mental capacity, grow our intellectual capacity, right? We need to grow our capacity as leaders because we expect our teachers to grow their capacity as teachers. We expect our students to grow their capacity as students. So does this person exhibit those qualities that invite a lifelong learner mindset into their career? Are they here to serve? That's another question I like to ask myself. Does this person come across as a person who is here to serve students, to serve their parents and the community, to serve their staff, their grade level, their greater, like the entire school community, the campus, the district? Are they here to serve? Are they here to play the game? Or are they just coming in, flying under the radar, and then heading out? Another question I ask myself is, if they were to quit, would I fight to keep them? Or if they quit, would I be secretly okay with it? Be honest with yourself, okay? Another question is, what is the emotion driving my decision? Am I being driven out of anger and frustration? Am I being driven out of doubt and fear and uncertainty? Am I being driven with alignment and confidence and clarity and calmness? When you are aligned, you're going to go through the motions. Even if it's uncomfortable, you will feel grounded. That is a different feeling than being angry and agitated at somebody, or being doubtful and unsure, like you're letting them go because somebody told you to, or because you just don't want them here, but you don't really have the evidence to prove it. And so you're a little nervous about that. You need to look at the emotion behind the decision. What is in the best interest of your staff and students? This isn't just about the person that you're speaking to, and it's not just about you. That conversation of two impacts the greater good. It impacts your entire school community. Is it in the best interest of students, staff, and community? And then how? How so? You want to be clear yourself. When you let somebody go, the more clear you can be in your decision-making process, the easier it will be to hold the conversation, because the goal is for you to go into that conversation grounded and certain in your decision and in what you're going to say. Now, I'm just going to tackle it here because I know it's going to come up. It came up with me. It comes up with my clients all of the time. It'll come up with you. When it's not your decision, when the district or somebody else tells you that we've made this decision, or you need to let somebody go. You might be told from a boss, you need to let this person go. So if this happens, here's what you need to do. Take stock on the matter. You need to just sit with it for a moment and ask yourself, what is my opinion here? Am I in agreement that this person needs to be let go? Am I not? Do I agree and I'm just uncomfortable? It's like, oh, I didn't really want to make that decision, but it is the right one. Or is it, no, I feel very strongly this is not a good decision. I'm not in alignment with this. You have to process that. And even if you're in disagreement, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to go argue for this person. You might decide to do that, or you might decide to like process that emotion and get yourself on board. You have to weigh yourself, like, how intensely do I feel misalignment? If I'm really intense, I might talk to somebody. You might need to understand why they're being let go. You might need more information, and that might be why there's a gap missing. There's a gap of information missing that you might need to be more aligned with the decision. And sometimes we're just like, we can't get on board. We just can't. But if you can't get on board, do speak to your boss, and just to seek to understand their decision-making process. And ultimately, if you have to agree to disagree, but you might have to follow through anyway. And that's just going to require you to feel the dissonance, the discord, the disagreement in your body, and have that conversation anyway. And you'll have to plan out that conversation so that it feels like it's in integrity for you, while also being in disagreement with your district and honoring that as an employee, you're going to do what's been asked of you. Okay. This is how I would reconcile these kinds of letting people go scenarios with myself. I would say to myself, it is possible to consider that there might be a reason that I just can't see, or some information that I'm not privy to knowing as to why this person's being let go. This doesn't happen super often, but if it does and you can't reconcile it, you can maybe get yourself to a place like, there must be some information I just don't know, or there's something outside of me that I can't see, but there is a reason. Somebody has a reason that they feel is solid as to why. And I'm going to do the best I can to deliver this news in the softest way possible, with honoring my employer's decision. Okay. All right. Let's talk about preparing for the conversation. So before you have the conversation, you've got to prepare yourself. You've got to look at your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions. You can't put yourself aside. So many times as school leaders, we're told, put your feelings aside and focus on the person. That's impossible, because energetically, your emotions are the energetic fuel that you use to go and make those decisions and take the action of talking to somebody. You have to look at what you're thinking and how you're feeling. It matters. You want to acknowledge it. You want to validate it, because you need to process your own emotions before you go into a conversation. If you're unprocessed, that conversation is not going to land the way you want it to, because your emotions are going to come to the surface, and you're going to be thinking more about where you are mentally and emotionally than where the person is. You want to be grounded, you want to be calm, and you want to be clear. So you need to process how you're feeling about it first, and then decide how you want to feel before that conversation, during that conversation, and after the conversation. And the way that you can do that is determine the intended outcome. I like to envision, like, what would be the ideal conversational experience for both the teacher and for myself? How do we want to walk out of this meeting? How do we want to feel leaving the meeting? Think about how you want to feel. Think about how you might want the other person to walk away thinking. Like, you might let them go in such a loving way that they feel really supported by you, or they feel really seen and understood and acknowledged and validated. And even though they might disagree, or they might be sad, they might have tears, or they might still be upset, that they felt that you handled it in a way that was supportive and kind and loving and generous and compassionate. Okay. Think about the intentions behind your action and your energy, and how you want to experience this conversation, and how you want the teacher to experience the conversation. And here's the truth. Here's why firing people feels bad. One reason it feels bad is that we think we have the power over their career. We feel like, as their leader, we're ruining their career. We're going to damage their career, their potential for the rest of their lives. It feels like very dramatic. That's not true. You are not damaging anything. You're making a decision based on what you think is best for your school. And that doesn't mean that you're ruining their career. It can feel like a huge burden to let somebody go, and you won't let somebody go if you think you're damaging them, you're causing harm to somebody. Just because somebody has an emotional experience when they're let go, it doesn't mean you've ruined their career. Oftentimes, it's the opposite. Oftentimes, when somebody gets let go, it's an opportunity for them to decide for themselves, because they are in charge of their career journey, not you. You are simply offering feedback in a particular form, which is they're not going to be invited back. That doesn't mean they're not going to land somewhere else and be amazing, but this isn't a match here. But if you think that you're going to negatively impact their professional destiny, you're going to be much more timid in making those decisions. Another reason that firing feels bad is when you take ownership of their feelings. When you say to yourself, I don't want them to feel bad, or I don't want to make them feel bad, or I don't want to hurt their feelings. You're assuming that you're taking ownership of their feelings, that you're causing their feelings. That never happens. I know this doesn't sound true, but hear me out. Here's how I know it is true. No one makes you feel a certain way. Someone can say mean things to you and you're not impacted. Someone can say mean things to you and you are impacted. Like when your toddler throws a tantrum and says, "Mommy, I hate you," you might hurt a little bit, but you don't take the word seriously because you understand they're in the middle of an emotional experience and they're two and they don't have the capacity to not say that because they're just reacting out of their emotions because developmentally they're two. And you're going to take it with a grain of salt that yes, in fact, they do love you, but they're having an emotional experience and they might say some things to release that emotional energy. And then they come back when they're done and they love you, right? You don't own your toddler's feelings, okay? Your toddler's having a toddler experience. Adults have the same experience, especially because we've not been taught as adults how to be emotionally resilient and how to have emotional literacy and emotional bandwidth. So you might experience somebody who's having a toddler-like tantrum emotional reaction. You did not create that. What happened is you said words. They had thoughts and opinions about those words, and those thoughts and opinions generated that emotional reaction. It's instantaneous, which is why it looks like your words created their feelings, but it can't be true because you could say the same set of words to two different people and get two different emotional reactions. If we were responsible for another person's feelings, then what we said would feel the same to every person. It would push the same emotional button, but it doesn't. They have thoughts and opinions and feelings and they interpretations of the words you're saying. Okay. When we take ownership and we feel responsible for their feelings, that's actually disempowering them. And it's putting another burden on you to not want to do the thing that you have to do. Okay. And I did this myself. I was like, oh, I would think beforehand, I would like, oh, I feel like I know what they're going to think. This person's going to feel this way. This person's not going to feel, they're going to feel like they're going to be fine with it because they're already mad and they don't even care. This person's going to be really hurt, really upset. They're super sensitive. We make assumptions ahead of time that we think we know how they're going to feel. And then we feel bad that they're going to feel bad, or we worry they're going to be upset, or they're going to get angry, or they're going to talk behind our backs for the next 3 months that they're here. And we end up projecting our feelings onto them. We project how we're going to feel about firing them onto them because we're thinking about how they are going to feel, how we're going to feel, and we muddy the waters here, okay? But on a deeper level, here's really why it feels bad. And I'm just going to be honest with you because I've done this. It has happened to me and I felt terrible about it, but I had to be honest with myself. On a deeper level, if you're contemplating letting somebody go, you might feel terrible about firing them because we didn't fully do our job as their leader for setting them up for success, which is why I started with how to set people up for success, because coming up in the future, plant the seeds where you're setting them up for success from the very beginning. You're looking for ideal candidates. You're interviewing them with intention and with the understanding of what you're looking for. You're articulating that. You're agreeing to the type of person, that type of energy, the type of teacher that you want. You're onboarding them. You have thought through that. And then all throughout the year, you're setting them up with conversations and expectations and cheering them on and being open and honest with them about their experience and where they're at and where they're doing well and where they might need to go on an improvement plan in advance. So it's never catching them off guard. Okay. When we let somebody go or we're contemplating it, it can feel bad if we know there's more we could have done or we didn't really set them up for success. Right. So if we didn't maybe observe them more times or support them, or we didn't coach them as much as we felt we could have, if we didn't document specific things, like we know they didn't measure up, but we didn't document it, that's really frustrating with ourselves, right? We know they didn't measure up, but we didn't document it. And now it's more of it's speculation and hearsay than like factual, okay? If we weren't being fully honest, if you had like post-observation conversations where you're like, well, you're kind of, beating around the bush about this could have been a little better. This part was okay. If you're not saying very specific, concrete, direct feedback, they might interpret that as, well, it's just an opinion. Like, I did it this way. Maybe they would have done it that way, but they might interpret it as nothing's gone wrong. If you're not open, honest, and transparent about the feedback that you're giving and the expectations that you have and communicating that for the entire year, the teacher might not see it coming and feel completely taken off guard. Okay. So please consider the other person's experience. Consider what the employee might be thinking and feeling and going through. And then think about what outcome you want them to have. Now, you're not controlling the outcome that they experience. I'm not saying you're going to like control or like manipulate or design the experience that they're going to have. They are going to have the experience that they choose to have based on what they're going to think and believe about themselves, about you, about the process. What you want to come in with is the outcome that you want to have, the outcome that is best for the greater good. Okay. You can try to create the experience you want them to have as much as possible. And you want to think about in advance how you'll handle an emotional reaction. Some people get very angry. Other people shut down. Some people cry. Other people go blank. You're going to have to think about how you want to handle those situations. All right, let's move into conversation prep steps. Clear your own thinking and emotions. That is so overlooked when we're preparing. We're thinking about the other person, but we're not thinking about us. When we're planning out this conversation and we're nervous, we haven't cleared our thoughts and feelings. We haven't given ourselves time to do any thought work or any self-coaching or getting mentorship or coaching. If you're in EPC, you can come in and talk about it to get yourself in a clean space. You want to fire these people from love and compassion, that you're doing it with gratitude for the service that they've offered, and you're letting them go with compassion. This isn't the best match for you, and I know there's a best match for you out there somewhere. It's just not here, right? And then be prepared. So number one, you've got to clear your own thinking. Number two, you've got to be prepared to have this documentation ready and to know what you're going to say. You don't want to have these conversations off the cuff. And then three, this is just out of humanity. Please have the conversation with them as soon as possible. If you've been setting them up and they're concerned that they might not be invited back, or they're afraid that they're going to be let go, you want to let them know as soon as possible. Don't drag this out. That's not fair to them. It's not fair to you. It just drags it out for you. It drags it out for them. It drags it out for the staff. Treat them as though you would want to be treated. Okay. Then when you're in the meeting, you want to be as honest and open as you can. Now, I always tell people this: know your specific HR policies and laws. Seek counsel ahead of time if you have to. If you're afraid that something might get confrontational, get counsel from members of your district staff, or if you need lawyers, but be as open and honest as you can from them in that conversation. Be very direct and clear. Another conversation you want to make sure is part of this is that you want to be very direct about them not coming back next year. You need to say it directly. Don't beat around the bush. Don't allow any room for interpretation. Oftentimes we try to say it nicely, but it's confusing for them. They're not really clear. Like, what did that mean? And you want to say, so to be clear, like in summary of this conversation, to be clear, I want you to understand that you will not be receiving an invitation to work in this district next year. And then let it sit there and marinate, because they're processing. They're going to have to be letting that sink in. That's not going to feel good for most people. Do you have any questions? Is there any information that you need from me right now? You say it, and then you pause, and then you let them process it, and then you ask them if you have any questions. Sorry. Cat's getting up on the counter. Okay. Some teachers think that you're just not having them back in that position and that they can apply for another position, or that they can go to another school in your district. You have to be very clear. So you and your district have to know ahead of time, are they eligible to come back to your school just in another position? Are they eligible to go to another position? What are they eligible for, and what are they not? You want to understand clearly yourself so that you can articulate it clearly to the teacher. And then finally, you need to allow them the human compassion and time to process what you've said. And please don't try to rush out of this conversation for your own discomfort to get out of that discomfort. Sit with them, hold space for them, and answer those questions as openly as you can. Sometimes they'll say, but I don't understand. Why is this happening? What? And they're going to want to go in. They're kind of in a disbelief. They're kind of in a little bit of shock. You just repeat what you told them before. These are the reasons. This is the documentation. This was the decision that was made. And this is, let me make it clear, you will not be invited back to the district next year. You want to set yourself up to prepare to interview in alternate districts. And I know you're going to shine when you land in the right job for you, right? Hold space for them. It's going to be an emotional time. This doesn't mean it has to be an emotional time for you. You can hold space. You can be in love and compassion and in understanding, but also in certainty and calm, and kind of in your empowerment energy, where their tears are not going to waver your decision or change your decision. Or if they get mad or angry or threatening, if something like that happens, you end the conversation. But if they get weepy or they get very sad, and that is very emotional for you, you want to understand that it's okay to be emotional, but you also want to think about them and hold space for them. And then just say, it's okay if you're emotional. That's totally a normal response. Feel free to go and take the time you need to process that and acknowledge those feelings, and come back to me if you have any questions or concerns. You can dismiss them if they're just unable to think of questions, or if they're not able to hold a conversation because they're upset. You can release them and then invite them back. Tell them when they're ready, they can come back. So you want to anticipate all the different emotions. As I said, they're going to offer all kinds of things. I've had people be silent. They're in shock. They're confusion. They won't talk. They're in disbelief. I've had people be very angry, where they're yelling and blaming and threatening, and they storm out. I've had people sad, like crying, begging, pleading, like desperate energy. I've had people in denial, where they reject what you're saying. They're arguing, they're justifying. They're like, no, you're not letting me go. And then I've had people who are like accepting. And those are the people who you've set up to understand that this is the next best step for them and for you. Okay. So tomorrow, I'm going to be offering part 2, holding space. Once you've had the conversation, you've made the decision, you've had the conversation, you've followed up with any questions or concerns that they have, and you've listened to them. Now you've got to work with them for 2 to 3 to 4 months after the fact. What do you do for that? I'm going to teach a course tomorrow on holding space for non-returning teachers, because there's a gap. I don't know any other organization that does this. It's a prolonged time of discomfort for yourself and for the teacher. So I'm going to address that tomorrow. Same time, just go into the LinkedIn where you registered here. There will be a Linktree account with the registration. You can sign up for that tomorrow. When you sign up, I will receive that. I will see who's signed up, and then you will have access to the free replay. All right, my friends, I hope this has been so helpful. I'm so glad you joined me today. If you have any questions, join the Facebook group and you can answer them there. You can email me at angelakellycoaching@gmail.com. And you can reach out if you want to learn more about the Empowered Principal world, the Empowered Principal Collaborative. Please feel free to reach out and get the information you need if it so invites you to be a part of this Empowered Principal experience. Have an amazing day. Go out, be well. I love you all. Take great care. Talk to you soon.